Fasting is fantastically beneficial for longevity, for so many things.
It gives me clarity of mind, and I just feel overall good when I fast.
The last thing you want to do at a restaurant is let your wife eat food and you not. That doesn't exactly make them feel good.
On the side of the brain, does implementing some intermittent fasting actually benefit your ability to focus?
Yeah, no, it's very accurate.
Fasting can be very valuable in retraining hunger cues. It can also be very valuable in gut rest.
That's why I like fasting. It's like I get to like kind of, people are going to say, oh, that sounds like a binge and purge type mentality. But no, it's like a mental reset for me. If I am going to enjoy something, then I do also feel like I can still maintain control by having some elements of fasting in my life. And it's okay to like food. I mean, it's a pleasure that we have, right? But yeah.
Before we go, because we're going to end up talking about a lot of different things, and I don't want us to talk about fasting, let's talk about something else and come back. So let's talk about some of the main benefits of fasting and why maybe some people should implement it, because there are people within different realms of like fitness, especially within the bodybuilding side, they seem to dislike it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I've seen that it's been super beneficial for me over the years, and it's been super beneficial for people I know, not just because of the way you can control your hunger, but also, I mean, conceptually, if you can just get in all your protein and your calories during the day, I haven't seen it really affect your ability to build muscle over time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People have the argument of, oh, even protein feedings and all of that, but it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference.
No, I think one of the biggest levers that you can pull in terms of bodybuilding, building muscle in general, is manipulating your insulin sensitivity. Like, I can't think of a better way to manipulate insulin sensitivity more than to take a break from eating. Like, it's the same reason we used to talk about constantly, oh, well, after a workout, you're insulin sensitive, so you have your anabolic window, right? It's been preached for years by the fitness community themselves, the bodybuilding community. So they can't like say that works in one situation, but not in another. That's completely BS. Like, come on. So like, and you're seeing much more of the bodybuilding community being accepting of intermittent fasting now. Like it's becoming much more talked about. I just had Stan Efferding on my channel, you know, and we were talking about that. And Stan Efferding, like, even said himself, he's like, the anabolic window is kind of BS. Like, you have a lot more time to eat than that 30-minute anabolic window. Yeah. So it's nice to hear from someone that's been on an Olympia stage that understands, right? That is respectful of intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. And that's just one person, but I know that there are multiple others. And for me, I've had some of my best gains in terms of muscle after my weight loss, you know, so after I'd lost weight. And of course, I lost a lot of muscle with that weight loss, but then, you know, I've built it back slowly, and now I've kind of lost it again because I'm doing a lot of running. But the point is, I mean, it's...
How many miles are you doing per week again, just so people can understand this?
Right now, about 25, but normally anywhere between 40 and 70, depending on what I'm training for.
He said that. So, he said that. Yeah. Just 40 to 70. Okay, let's
so it's I'm nothing like Nick Bear. I'm not fast, but you know, I can maintain my speed for at least 7 to 8 miles. After that, I'm just a slow 9-minute mile guy, just cruising along. So, and then people say, Thomas, you don't have huge legs. Well, yeah, because I'm kind of running a lot, but it's all good. And also just because maybe I'm just a big giant pansy. I don't know. But anyway, point is that, and I still manage to maintain muscle, even still doing so. But with intermittent fasting, you're allowing your body to become much more insulin sensitive. And when you do that, then of course, yeah, you have an opportunity when you do break your fast to capitalize on that. So one of the things that I really like doing is either having like a really early dinner, or sometimes just skipping dinner, which is hard to do with a family because it's kind of rude. But hey, like when you're a man and you sit there with your wife, the last thing you want to do at a restaurant is let your wife eat food and you not. That doesn't exactly make them feel good. Yeah. And you kind of feel like a jerk. But anyway, when I have that in my ability to do so, yeah, I'll just skip dinner, or I'll have dinner early, which is great because we have small kids. So all about having dinner early. We'll have it, be done by 5, right? And then that means if I go and I work out the next day at, 8 a.m. or something, I'm pretty deep in a fast, right? So people are like, well, you're going to break down muscle during your workout. No, it doesn't work like that. Nope. Like, not at all. Especially if you're producing ketones at that point. Even if you're not doing a ketogenic diet, you're eating carbs with fasting. After 18 hours of a fast, you're probably producing at least trace amounts of ketones, which are pretty muscle preserving. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone's not going to lose some muscle, but you're going to offset that muscle burn by when you finish your workout, then you break your fast. You're breaking your fast with a double advantage. One, you're insulin sensitive from your workout, Two, you're insulin sensitive because you haven't been eating for 18 hours. So the quote unquote anabolic response, if you want to call it that, is going to be significantly higher. Yes, it matters how many calories you take in a day, but we all do know that there are, specific times where you can get more benefit, right? From insulin signaling and from muscle protein synthesis. After a workout is one of those times, at least a few hours after a workout, it's a little better. And so I feel like it's all about manipulating timing and really looking at that big equation versus, and how many calories are you getting in total, right? Just because you're fasting doesn't mean that you're only eating 1,200 calories. If you're actually paying attention to it, it's not that hard to meet your daily amount of calories.
Yep.
So what I do is I look at my calories over the course of a week versus each day. How many calories am I at the end of a week? So if if I'm supposed to consume 3,000 calories a day, then I want to be around 21,000 calories for maintenance at the end of the week. Some days, maybe it's 1,500. Some days, maybe it's 3,500. Some days, maybe it's 4,000. At the end of the day, I'm ultimately getting to the same point. And it's, if I want to gain weight, then I bump that up and I try to get myself in a surplus of like 300 to 400 calories for the week. Okay, for the week, I don't go into these massive crazy bulks. I try to get a small surplus. Same if I'm trying to cut a small deficit, because I have these like macro deficits that are happening over the course of the week. And then I have these micro deficits that are happening by spacing my meals apart certain ways, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So intermittent fasting is just, for me, and then let's just back up for a second and let's think about cortisol and stress and sustainability, right? Bodybuilding is not necessarily sustainable for a lot of people. We were talking about your competitive history, my competitive history. That's not realistic. Like I don't want to, once you have kids, I can't speak for everybody. I speak for myself. Once I had kids, I'm packing their lunches. Last thing I want to do is pack my little like lunchbox too. Like I just, I'd rather just, it's like, come on, man. Like, what am I, 3? This is dumb. So it's like, and yeah, you're going to title this. Thomas says bodybuilders are dumb. No, not at all. But my point is that I don't want to do that forever. And it just made a lot more sense for me to say like, hey, okay, well, some days I just take a break and I can actually do it for a longer period of time and keep it off.
I'd like for people to start to think of things a little bit differently. So like breakfast, for example, whenever you eat, that's breakfast because you broke your fast, right?
Yeah.
Post-workout nutrition, anytime after a workout that you ate, that's post-workout nutrition. Doesn't matter how far away it is. I guess you could say, hey, well, if it's 3 days later that you ate, then maybe there's, maybe that's not post-workout or whatever, right? Any food that you eat after a workout, you could have worked out at 8 a.m., and then you could eat at 8 p.m. It's still a post-workout. And we can argue about glucose and we can review a bunch of studies, but people don't study everything. And people don't study individuals that are usually pretty hardcore. You don't really see that. So that when I hear people mentioning studies all the time, I'm like, well, I haven't fucking studied me. Like maybe I'm being arrogant about it, but I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, I'm doing the exact opposite of what that study shows. And for some reason, this feels great. And for some reason, I'm starting to hear more people say that this is working. So when it comes to like breakfast, post-workout, pre-workout, same thing. Maybe you didn't eat at 7:30 because you're going to train at 8:30 a.m. Maybe the food that you ate was the night before. Yep. It's still pre-workout.
Still pre-workout, man.
You understand the body really, really well. Does our protein disappear 12 hours later? Does our glucose disappear? Does our fat?
Our calories actually reset every day at midnight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so everything.
I felt that happen to me.
Yeah. If you're awake and you pay attention to it, you can feel it. It's really cool. It's like you feel it. You sit there and it's like there's this subtle click. And that's your body.
I felt that before.
That's their body resetting. Okay. It goes back to zero.
Okay, I thought that was
some people
boner or something. I misinterpreted that.
No,
it's.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
No, that's the one thing you're mentioning there is that's one thing years ago, especially when I've been focusing on building muscle, and also being an athlete, you always hear your coaches say, for soccer, have a carbohydrate-rich meal 2 or 3 hours before practice. Yeah. Bodybuilding, have a carbohydrate-rich meal before lifting. And it'd be in my head. So whenever I would lift on an empty stomach before, I'd be like, fuck, I'm so weak, blah, blah, blah. But after I started implementing some fasting, and then after I just started doing some training and not getting in my head, along with finally getting some electrolytes, because that made a big difference for me, especially while fasted, I was like, damn, my performance is actually really fucking good. Whether it's in the gym, whether it's doing jujitsu, I can be fasted in training, and I'm doing great because I ate enough food the day before. And one thing people mess up, exactly.
It's the day before.
They don't eat enough food in their eating window sometimes.
Yeah, dude, you nailed it with the day before thing, because it's taken me a long time to figure that out too, because especially with fasting, you get kind of addicted to it and you start, it makes you so present that sometimes you forget about those, I say this term a lot, but like those lagging indicators, those things that do, what you ate before is going to rear its ugly head the next day. Especially with intermittent fasting, when you're like kind of you're just running on a very thin delta to begin with. So yeah, I think you nailed that. But another interesting piece is that for me, I've been training fasted for so long that I actually was getting in my own head and finding that if I were to train in the afternoon and I had eaten, I would have a crappy workout. And then I realized that I had to go back to some of my old school days and think like, no, I know this isn't real, because you can still have a good workout fed.
Yes.
Plenty of phenomenal athletes do. However, you can get yourself, there is a real thing. It's, peripheral insulin resistance when you have trained fasted for so long that your body, I'm going to make this exceptionally colloquial, but basically your body is almost rejecting nutrients when you eat before your workouts. And when I say rejecting, it just means the cells are like, whoa, you're trying to like cram glucose into me right now. I'm not used to this. So what I've actually done is, I'd say 90%, probably more of my workouts are fasted, but I will consciously make sure that I do occasionally do a fed workout too, because I don't want to lose the tolerance of that. And the interesting thing is, I'd say with specific anaerobic activities, I feel, if I had to put a random number on it, maybe 5% stronger if I have some carbs in me. But I definitely, I feel my body very well, and I feel like I'm definitely not burning as much fat, right? I feel like that's stopped. That's just how I feel, but I'm pretty sure that's fairly accurate that, if I have a high degree of like insulin spike while I'm working out, I'm probably blunting fatty acid oxidation to a certain degree. But what I find that does is it maintains my glucose tolerance so that I'm good at both ways. I'm good at training in a fasted state where my body's good at utilizing fats as a fuel source and going through, liberating glycogen for the proper usage. And then I also want to be able to occasionally marinate my cells in glucose so they still know how to use that, because marinate your cells in glucose. That. Yeah, because it's like, get some of that Newman's Own dressing. And, I find that pancreatic beta cells really, and hepatic cells really like Newman's Own. They like the Thousand Island dressing. So
delicious.
So it's, because I think all of us here, Mark, you came from a power background, but you're much more of a hybrid athlete now. You're definitely a hybrid athlete. I consider myself a hybrid athlete. You want to be dual fueled. You want to be able to be the best at using both. And who are we to say, carbohydrates are not bad. We just need to find the place that they work, right? Yeah. They don't work when you're sitting down. They don't work when you're not burning them. They're designed. So for an active person, it's foolish to not occasionally convince your body to use glucose, because you'll develop a degree of glucose intolerance. And we want to be the best we can possibly be, not necessarily so one-track minded on just like looking a certain way. We just want overall optimization, right?
So I've heard a lot of anecdotes of people saying I'm able to focus better when I'm fasted, like when I'm not eating or I'm not focused on food. So that's why I started doing it. And I noticed that effect. And people have said that it does increase BDNF when you're doing some intermittent fasting or long-term fasting. So what I'm curious about is on the side of the brain, does implementing some intermittent fasting actually benefit your ability to focus, or is that more of some woo-woo stuff about fasting?
Yeah, no, it's very accurate. I know what you're talking about. So basically the way this seems to work is that first of all, by the way, ketogenic diets were developed for epileptic patients at Johns Hopkins University originally. You know that, right? So what it does is, it seems to be the ketogenic diets either reduce glutamatergic activity, which is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the nervous system, or they increase GABAergic activity. So they seem to make people a bit calmer. The other thing that people have noticed, and really where I paid attention to this was, how, Mark, there's these rodent studies about caloric restriction and fasting that David Sinclair and so on talk about a lot. Many people don't know that depending on the rodent strain, if you give the rodent a low protein ketogenic diet, they can live sometimes as long as caloric restriction. But the interesting difference is that they have the best integrity of their brain later in life. So it seems to be that either insulin resistance or glucose or sugar, in fact, could be damaging to the brain. We know sugar is, because by the way, dopamine is a neurotoxin. If you cause too much dopamine release acutely, it's excitatory, cells downregulate in response to it. But if they don't, they die. So, for example, if you're eating a lot of sugar all day, you may experience some kind of excitotoxicity. But I really think it's just this insulin resistance and high glucose levels in the brain causing detriment over time. So what I think is happening with you probably is what happens to me. So I do time-restricted eating. I still eat salads and stuff like that. So I'm not eating a ketogenic diet, but because I'm only eating for about 8 hours a day, by the next morning, I have some kind of fat adaptation coming along, and my brain is much clearer thinking. I would advise the audience, if anybody in the audience tries a real ketogenic diet that's not high in like really toxic saturated fats, it's not like all butter, for a couple of weeks, you'll notice your brain thinks clearer. You can think from the top down better. Your short-term memory is better. You notice that too?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So that's one of the best. It's one of the best ways without pharmacology and supplements to improve your concentration. So if somebody, for example, fasted 5 days every month, but throughout the month was eating a lot of protein and that kind of stuff, which is what I did for a year, by the way. I fasted 5 days for a whole year, originally 7 days, and then I was doing 5 days every month. So when you do that, though, you end up losing so much body fat, you have to eat more the rest of the month. Mm-hmm. I think that's fine. I think you get that 2-week reduction and that 2-week growth stimulus. I think that some kind of cyclicality is the key.
And do you think that the fast does it need to be a consecutive 5 days, or can you do like 24-hour fast? The norm, like, did you do that 5 days throughout the month?
So there's a couple of common factors that happen in blood tests after about the 3rd day. They don't happen in the 2nd day. The first 2 days you tend to have high ghrelin signaling, which is that hunger hormone, which also the reason why you have high growth hormone signaling, why it's difficult to sleep and so on. The 3rd day, you tend to adapt to it. And of course, by the way, the more times you do fast, the easier it becomes. At the end of my year, I was doing 5-day fast. I was barely feeling hungry until the 4th or 5th day. But so the 3rd day, something happens. If you go do your blood test on the 3rd day, you'll find your uric acid is high, your testosterone is low, your triglycerides are low. There's a repetitive pattern. My goal would be to get that in the blood test and then keep it for 2 days as a minimal effect. You know, I used to fast for a week, but I found out this seemed inefficient. Most of what happened in the first 3 days or so. 1 day fast can be useful in the sense that they could increase insulin sensitivity throughout but I don't think you're going to get in that phase of regeneration that Valter Longo has so many studies on in 2 days.
Could you speed up the effect of a 5-day fast with high levels of cardiovascular exercise while you're fasting? Let's say you're doing weight training and cardiovascular exercise. Could you get the effect of a 5-day fast in a 3-day period or a 2-day period if you're doing that?
I'm quite certain you can. And people have been now experimenting on my channel with using things like thyroid medication, because the thyroid hormone declines during the fast and is one of the reasons that you expend less energy. So the fast, a lot of it seems to have to do with the nutrient sensing issue and then cellular stress. If you could exaggerate that stress a little bit, it may speed up the whole process. So using something like thyroid hormone or doing more cardiovascular exercise, which I was doing on my fast, I would do a lot of, and it would speed it up tremendously. You could notice, especially like you get rid of your glycogen stores faster. So you enter into that phase faster. Usually it takes a day to 2 days to get rid of those glycogen stores, the excess ones in the liver. But this can happen very fast if you're doing more cardiovascular exercise, or if you enter the diet in a ketogenic diet, or if you use thyroid hormone, or if you use clenbuterol, or so on.
Yeah, I remember years ago when people were talking about the fastest way to get into like ketosis, and one of the fastest ways was just to not eat, walk a lot. Like there was some people that like literally kind of walked all day, and the other thing they did is they didn't drink water. And it somehow kind of expedited the whole entire process, which is, I don't know, I find it pretty fascinating. I personally have never done that protocol because I'm like, it doesn't seem like a great idea. I like to train as well. So, but I have done fasts from water before, along with fasting away from food. I've done that combination before, and it actually feels really powerful. Have you ever messed around with that?
Well, because I grew up in a Muslim country in Dubai, we fast for 30 days for a few hours every day from water and food. So I was experienced with that from childhood. I never noticed any benefit from fasting from water personally. And I know that there are people that believe that fasting from water may be beneficial. I've never seen any academic evidence of this. What I'd be concerned about is that the most harmful thing for the kidneys is acute dehydration. Mm-hmm. It's much worse than hypertension. It's worse than, anything except maybe injecting yourself with a poison IV. It's very damaging to the kidneys. So my concern would be that there's some damage there. And I don't know, maybe there is some benefit. Maybe we have some water sensing pathway we don't know about. But we don't know about it for sure.
in the like these types of fasts that we were talking about, these very specific fasts to help with like a cyclical type of diet, would using electrolytes during that fast, that wouldn't take away from anything, right? That would just help with hydration. Let's say that you had an electrolytes, sodium, magnesium, potassium. Would that be beneficial during, or would that take away from anything we're trying to do?
You wouldn't want to use potassium, but you could use magnesium and sodium. And in fact, I do, and I'll tell you how I usually do it. So usually supplement with maybe like 500 elemental milligrams of magnesium, which could be much higher than that depending on the what it's attached to. So there's a variety of kinds of magnesium. Magnesium orotate, for example, is an inferior one. Citrate is all right. I use sometimes L-threonate or bisglycinate. Bisglycinate is the most absorbable form in studies, but they've never compared bisglycinate to L-threonate, which seems to get into the brain better.
Power Project family, how's it going? Now, we've talked about blood work and getting your labs done on this podcast with many different guests, as that's super important for understanding what's going on underneath the hood. That's why we've been partnered with Merrick Health for such a long time now, owned by Derek for more plates, more dates. With Merrick Health, you can get yourself the Power Project panel, or you can select any specific labs you want to get. And after you get that done, you'll be able to work with one of Merrick's patient care coordinators, where they'll help you understand what type of nutritional, lifestyle, hormonal, or other type of interventions you can utilize to help fix whatever might be going on underneath the hood. Merrick is your one-stop shop to make sure that everything is going well underneath the hood. Andrew, how can they get their blood work done?
Yes, we have two options for you guys. Head over to marrickhealth.com/powerproject. That's MAREK health.com/powerproject. There you guys will see the Power Project panel that Nsima was just talking about. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save $101 off of that panel. Now, if you want to custom select your own panel, you guys can use promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off all labs. Again, that's at marrickhealth.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
Most days, I still don't eat in the morning. I'll eat most of my food later in the day. Some days, if I don't feel like it, I'll just eat breakfast and go through the day, right? But I know what my hunger used to be like. I was never obese, but I had the appetite of somebody. I could kill you in an eating competition. And I always felt that at that time, I was counting calories and I was never able to have true control over my hunger. The thing that helped me was getting used to not always eating when I felt hungry. And because of that, nowadays, I have control over my hunger. I don't count anything. I eat when I want. I still eat healthy, but I actually have control over it because of the practice of time-restricted feeding over time and getting used to not always eating in response to hunger. Now, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because I've seen a lot of Lane and how he's talked about fasting, and a lot of people talk about fasting as some type of magical thing. We still know that it is calories in, calories out is the big thing. You could fast and binge eat, and it might not make a difference if your calories are over where you need to be. But within practice, I see that as being something that could train a person to not always respond to hunger. So how do you feel about the practice of time-restricted feeding? And then potentially, can it fall in line with any of the things that we're seeing as far as longevity is concerned?
I believe, and again, this is clinical practice, that fasting can be very valuable. It can be very valuable in retraining hunger cues. It can also be very valuable in gut rest. Individuals that have frequent GI upset or irritable bowel, you're not continuously feeding them. And that can be very beneficial. I believe that also when you eat, there is some circadian rhythm to our biology, just in general. Does this mean it's going to change body composition? Perhaps no, but it does allow you for calorie control. I do believe that it does allow you to retrain and not respond to hunger. You become very good at tolerating the experience of hunger. Typically, people experience hunger as an emergency. Before you are able to gain control of your physiology, whether it's mental or physical, hunger is an emergency. And if you do not cross that bridge, if you do not get that under control, you're going to have a very difficult time with any kind of, unless you're a sumo wrestler, where you probably, Mark last year. No, I'm just kidding. Unless you are a sumo wrestler, these things, it's your responsibility to regain control of your hunger. And we live in a very obesogenic environment. We live in a very soft environment. Time-restricted feeding, fasting can be valuable. Is it a magic bullet? Absolutely not, right? Can it be potentially damaging for older individuals who I see are really into fasting these days? From a clinical perspective, absolutely. Those individuals, for example, my father, when he goes through periods of long, and he's 70 something, he didn't kill me because I don't know exactly, 72, 74, he gets really pissed. But when he goes through long periods of fasting, I mean, he loses muscle.
So when you say long periods too, is he like, is he going multiple days and eating very minimal food?
Yes,
like,
he easily could go 2 days without eating.
Ooh, okay.
But routinely, he won't eat all day. He's onto this new thing where he's not going to eat all day. He's going to eat one meal. That is not ideal for body composition. And it's not ideal for an aging individual. In the fitness space and in kind of the longevity space, it's really divided. Fitness, we think about being jacked and tan, and in your college years, you're in the gym, you're weightlifting, and some of us are still doing that. And really, it's about protein and performance and all that stuff. And then you kind of transition over to, okay, longevity. And then after longevity, there's like the paleo crew, CrossFit. And then what about the conversations for the older individual? Who is targeting? Where are they getting their information? Who is providing information to, say, 50, 60, 70-year-olds? Nobody really, right? I mean, unless there's someone who's really doing it, they are then getting their information in the domain of midlife. And you and I talked about, can you span midlife? Yeah, but where this whole fasting thing has taken off, the older population who is really interested in health and wellness, the information out there is not targeted to them. So they are broadly taking the information that is provided, protein restriction, do your fasting, do some more yoga, do your stretching. All of this is valuable, but is it valuable to an older population? What are the unintended consequences of that? So I don't know.
So along with that, I'm curious, like someone like your father who's older, as people get older, their appetite does go down. So when he's trying to do this one meal a day, if he were getting in enough calories, is he getting enough calories is my actual question.
Yeah.
And he is?
Yeah.
But even so, it's still obviously not the best thing for him to do that one meal at his age.
I believe that there's controversy on this particular topic. People will say that protein intake over a 24-hour period is what is most important. Is that true? Yes, and. Yeah, it is. 24-hour period is true. You do need it. Is my father going to go into protein deficiency? No. However, is it optimal for an older individual who perhaps is not lifting the way that he used to, probably because he's lazy, only if he's listening, which he will listen. But is it optimal? It's not.
He could have a leucine sandwich, right?
No, he needs all of it, right? You need all the amino acids. You need the full spectrum of amino acids to really stimulate that tissue. For the aging population, no, one meal a day is not ideal. 2 meals, I'm happy with 2 meals at 50 grams of protein or higher to then really stimulate that tissue twice a day. Again, it is also about maintaining the integrity of muscle over a period of time. And young tissue is not the same as older tissue.
Are there legitimately any benefits to fasting as far as longevity is concerned? And maybe with the way that we're looking at fasting, as a protocol, what ways do you think we might be getting it wrong with how we use it?
Yeah, good question. I'm just after what actually really works. And to get to that question, you have to factor in over time. You have to factor in long term, because there's this misconception that things work kind of in a straight line. And that's not true of almost anything. Like almost nothing works in a straight line. What you see is most things work fantastically well up front, and then there's attenuation down the line. So they don't work as good down the line. Some things dip under the curve, and then there's negatives down the line. Okay. That's how things actually work. And I don't care what you're talking about. It's, we know that's true, like with SSRIs. Okay, they work fantastic up front, and then later on you got to take, like a car full of the things. That's true of most things. So, and fasting is not excluded from that. I'm just saying that based on my experience over many, many years. So fasting is fantastically beneficial for longevity, for so many things. You know, it is a great practice. What I have seen, what I've experienced, and what I've seen with other people is that it doesn't work in a straight line. So you can see fantastic benefits up front, and then there's an attenuation effect as you get a few years into it, 3, 4, 5 years. And I've seen this pretty consistently with people that I've spoken with, and you start to see a kind of a cluster of things. One of those things is suddenly they have trouble dropping fat down the line. Another thing is that their hunger gets dysregulated. Okay, another thing is that their sleep can get dysregulated. And so you see this cluster of things. So what that speaks to is, what's the right dosing? That's really the question. What's the right dose? What's the right dose of fasting? Is it like, a way of life all the time? Or is it better in sort of strategic doses? That's the main question to my mind with fasting. And then, is there a way that we can take fasting, which inherently, when we start to break it down and go, why does fasting work?
And we're just talking about, let me ask, we're just talking about like 16 and 20. We're not talking about multiple day fasts currently, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I also have found it to be super beneficial just to go, I don't know, 6 or 8 waking hours without food. And that could mean I wake up and eat, and then I don't eat again until later on in the evening. Or it could mean that I wait all the way until the evening and eat twice, at 3 and then again at 7 or something like that. So I've found that to be really beneficial. But I understand what you're saying. It kind of sounds like what you're saying is the longer that someone practices fasting, the more likely over a period of time they are to move away from it, which would be kind of proof that maybe it is causing some of these things that you said, like dysregulated hunger. And I have noticed some of that in myself, to where sometimes I'm like, holy shit, I think this has made me hungrier. I think this has almost re-regulated my hunger, because I think my hunger was like dampened for many years because of the way I was eating. To be a 330-pound power lifter, people are usually surprised that I didn't eat that much. Now I feel like I could enter an eating competition at this point with the way I can eat now.
That's good. Yeah, what I would offer with that is, like, where my road has taken me, after 40 plus years of doing this stuff, is that I approach everything like mixed martial arts. Like, all of these things are techniques, and I can use any one of them. The question is, when do I want to use it? That's all. Like let's say fasting is like calf kicks, okay? And the question is, well, hey, are calf kicks good? And the answer is like, yeah, they can be fantastic, but I wouldn't make my whole fight game based on calf kicks. I mean, you might win a fight, I don't know, but there's times when you might have to throw a punch, you might have to like grapple, you might have to go for an arm lock. And it's really more about, like, carnivore, is that bad or is that good? No, it's a great tool. It's like, that's like a overhand right. Is keto a great tool? Yeah, that's like a head kick. Okay. So when do you use these things? And it's like, the answer is, this thing we're talking about is much more like a fight. It's much more like mixed martial arts than it is this. It's not a punching bag. It's like, you can go to the punching bag and you just practice that Tyson body punch uppercut. You just practice that all the time. You're really good at that, okay? But that's not what fights are like, okay? Fights go wherever they go, and you got to be prepared. So, that's the way I approach it. These things are all good, but like, you can overdo calf kicks, So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and something also interesting with like fasting nowadays, and I don't know if you mentioned this to me over the phone or something recently, but like nowadays I'll still look at it like fasting, but I just had a protein shake with some like coffee, and there's some heavy cream with coffee, but I'm not going to eat again until probably this evening. But even though that's calories, I'm still looking at as like a fast. You know what I mean? And technically I had calories, so a lot of people will be like, that's not fasting. But I don't necessarily need to, like, there are some days where I won't have something in the morning, but I'll have something like that, or I'll have a protein shake throughout the day. And the thing that happened with me over the years is just my hunger is not as voracious as it was, where if I would get hungry, I would have to fucking respond, or else my mood would I'd get annoyed or whatever. I'm not controlled by that anymore, but I can intermittently eat whenever I want and just be perfectly okay. It's like I have better signals of how much I should eat and when I should eat. And it's very auto-regulated. Like, I don't count anymore, but it's very just intuitive.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. That's okay. You hit on something pretty fascinating. So where I'm at now with this, and what I put in the book was that let's break fasting down, and why does fasting why does fasting work? Okay. So we start to break fasting down. We go, well, you get autophagy, you get ubiquination. So you get the breakdown of stuff that has to go in the trash, kind of keeps things clean. Okay, that's good. You get these signal pathways activated. You get the sirtuins activated. You get AMP-K activated. Okay, that's good. And you start to just break fasting down into its concomitant mechanisms. And you go, okay, well, can we activate those apart from fasting? And yeah, wow, wait, actually we can. So one of the best ways is through the gut. So we can manipulate the bacteria in the gut to produce bifidobacteria, to produce bacteria that really help those things, that help those pathways turn on, that help, and you just keep making your list, like HDAC inhibition. That just means that we're making better copies of DNA so we can make proteins. Okay, well, we can do that with bifidobacteria. In the gut, you can do it. And you just keep going down this list. And it's like, wow, yeah. So there seems to be probably a pretty good case that we can activate a lot of these same pathways before fasting so that we don't have to fast as long. And then on top of that, when we turn to the insulin side of the equation and we go, well, let's keep going. What's another reason fasting works? Well, one reason seems to be that you get this cessation or pause in signals down the IGF-1 IIS pathway. Okay, so when you look at glucose transport, and when you look at what gets turned on when cells bring glucose in, you have the metabolic pathway. Okay, and that sort of uses mTOR as kind of a throttle. So in the metabolic pathway, mTOR works like it works like the accelerator. It's like back off on the gas, or we need more gas. Okay. The other side of the equation is a pathway, the MAPK pathway, that controls progression of cell cycles. Okay. And so there's a theory on aging, the signal pathway theory, that has probably pretty good reason to believe that the more signals down that pathway, the faster you age. And if you just look at the signal pathways in bringing glucose in the cell, kind of makes a lot of sense. Makes a ton of sense. So fasting kind of turns that off, gives us a little break. Okay. The other thing is that fasting also helps replete Akkermansia. Okay. So Akkermansia is the other half of the commensal bacteria equation. It's the one we need to keep the gut lining working the way it should, and very difficult to feed through food. You can, but it's tough. But fasting repletes Akkermansia. So Akkermansia doesn't like dietary protein. The best way to understand it is your mouth makes saliva, and that saliva has glycoproteins or proteins in it, and you have bacteria in your mouth, and that's what they feed on. So Akkermansia feeds on saliva secreted in the gut, and it likes that. But when you have like too much protein in the diet, you're activating these growth signal pathways, okay? And you're advantaging other kinds of bacteria that prefer their nitrogen from the diet, okay? So there's a lot of things to think about here, but it seems to be complementary, that when you are spinning up bifidobacteria, that helps Akkermansia. And if you do it before a fast, then you fast, you're spinning up Akkermansia, and you have this balance of things that you can make a really good case is optimal. Then the other side of the equation becomes, so when you're fasting, you're ceasing for the most part, the production of insulin. Okay. That's not bad, periodically. The other side of that equation is certain types of fibers tend to potentiate insulin sensitivity. Okay. So you have all these helper hormones around insulin. Like insulin doesn't do its job alone. You have the incretin proteins, which is GIP, GLP-1. You have adiponectin. So you have these other hormones, the family of insulin hormones that help insulin do its thing. And so you can make this case, and I tried to make it in the book. I hope I made a good case, that there's this way of eating that takes all the benefits of fasting and makes it better. You get insulin sensitization through fibers prior to fasting. You get this pre-activation of signal pathways before fasting. And I think that there's a proof of it. I'll probably have you guys try it, which is if you do it, you get hungrier way, way faster. Hunger is sort of one of your indicators that you've been fasting. Okay. What you see, like when most people start fasting initially, is they don't get that hungry. They're like, I'm kind of good. Feel pretty good. You have them start doing fibers a day before and like, man, I'm starving. What time are we eating? We were going to do a 2024. Let's just dial that back. Let's eat at lunch. Yeah. You see it pretty fast.
Just like it's something that you don't really have to think about. When you do it, it's not like you're like, oh, I can't wait till I eat my next meal. It's just a tool for you. How long did it take for that, if you remember?
Yeah, I would say that's all within easily the first month.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because all you need is for your metabolism to be like, oh, we can cross this line from we burn through all the blood sugar, right? Which is should be a small amount if we're healthy, to, oh, we burn fat throughout the day.
Yeah. So the reason why I actually asked you that is because we've been utilizing fasting for years now. It's something easy. It's something that helped me not be able to, like, I have control over my hunger. When I want to eat, I eat. When I don't, I don't. Like this morning, I ate, but I don't give a fuck because I could fast anytime I want. Hunger doesn't bother me anymore. I like when I feel hungry, it's not like I have to reach for food. It's hunger because I've gotten myself used to that feeling and I don't always have to respond to it. That's why I think, we were talking yesterday, we talked about like seeking discomfort helps with progress. And fasting initially for a lot of people is an uncomfortable thing. It is not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. Feeling hungry initially doesn't feel good. But you get yourself used to it day by day. You do a little bit more. Maybe you bump it up a few hours. Maybe you do have a binge here or there, but you get back on and you continue to get used to it. And then it becomes a tool that you can pull upon, whereas you're hungry and then you realize I'm not angry. I don't have to reach for food. I think it's a tool that everybody can benefit from diving down. Because some people
They can use some version of it. Yeah.
Some version of it, because all it does is it trains you not to always respond to hunger.
Yeah.
I
used to get on the plane and like wait for like the peanuts. Where are the peanuts? I gotta get, and now it's like I just resign myself like, okay, I'm gonna go to the airport. I'm not gonna eat until I land wherever I land, and just learn to fast throughout flights. And to me, that's the greatest strength of all, because that's like, I used to get all frantic on an airplane going like, I need to have protein bars with me. Yeah. I need to bring beef jerky. And I would have to bring all these things. And now it's like, I don't bring anything. And I don't worry about it.
You get some freedom from it. But I think we have to be conscious of the fact that there's people that respond so differently to food. Like they just, I don't know, they maybe have had traumas in their life and they are heavy. Person that you mentioned, 370, like when people start getting into those weight ranges, their relationship with food, their relationship with themselves is usually not great. They almost always have a trauma that is somewhere in the background. And I think it's easy for us to say like, oh, they should be able to do, but like it's literally I think it's just way different for them. I think they're just coming from a much further range back. So like you and I can say, oh man, our fucking hormones like felt off and we felt like shit for a long time. And then, but where we were coming from anyway, just having an athletic background, always being into weights, like this is our craft. No one in here has really had a real job. Oh, Andrew. Sorry, Andrew.
I had a real job.
I had a real job for like 12 years, dude.
There's
you beat me there.
Yeah.
There's things to kind of just be considerate of. And I don't think that people need to have like a mind virus to block them from being able to fast just because they maybe previously had such a hard time with food. I think you can grow into it, but I've seen people use fasting and it literally not work very well because they'll overdo it. So if you fast and you binge and you fast and you binge, feasting is one thing, like strategically feasting, but binging and going way off plan and eating ice cream and stuff like that is another. And I've had that experience. I think you've had that experience, fair to say.
And I have a question for you after this.
Yeah. So I just think we got to be kind of conscious of that. Those things can happen, but I agree that I think this is the way for a lot of people to go, especially when you're considerate of a carnivorous style diet, because as my brother and I have kind of talked about before, you eat some steak and then you don't eat for a while. And then you eat some steak. And if you're not hungry for the steak, if you're not hungry for the carnivore meal, you didn't wait long enough. And it's kind of a simple, it's a simple rule for us to talk about.
Well, it should be intuitive.
It might be more difficult for other people to adopt, but over time, I think that's where most people should work their way towards. You need a lot of psychology in there. And I think the hard thing to remember with fasting is you have to pretend that it never happened. Those 12 or 14 or 16 or 18 hours that you accumulated, it means something. Like you worked for it, but then we can kind of negate it if we're not careful. So,
so it's always discipline equals freedom, right? So what we do wrong is you post the 4:30 a.m. selfie like, I'm in the gym, I'm kicking ass, I'm crushing it. To me, where we need to place the discipline is the step before. So if you're in school and you're like, dude, it's finals week, I've got to cram. Okay, I crammed, I got a passing grade, we're good. Versus, oh, I studied the whole semester. I studied a little bit more because it was finals week, I had the time. And then I came and aced the test because I studied the whole semester. If I go to bed at 10 p.m. with full dose of melatonin where I can't even hold up the book that I'm trying to read, then it's no big deal that I got up at 5:15.
So we need a selfie with the alarm clock next to a 7:30 p.m. selfie.
Yeah, exactly.
Going to bed.
It's the bedtime selfie.
Yeah.
And I actually do that. So I have my little Kruger Body app with my clients in it, and I'll put like my bedtime one up there. So I was like, okay, I just read my daughter a story. My room is all orange. Here's the bedtime selfie. And if you put
that's weird. Why is he in a G-string? Never thought, didn't know he's going to do that.
Well,
but he got to get the views.
Well, yeah, and I look great in it too.
Yeah,
so yeah, obviously.
That's important.
There must be a paywall, right?
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a big paywall.
That's what it is.
Yeah, take it back to the step. Put the discipline first. And people, like I said, they always want to start with the hardest step and imagine how hard it is, and it's this big monster to slay. Fasting's not hard if we start you with 200 grams of protein from a ribeye or from a top sirloin. It's not like literally, okay, this is how hard it's going to be. We're going to
200 grams of protein from a ribeye would be challenging.
That's a big
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
That's like
So,
fucking size of this table.
So people, this is just pure magic because imperial units that we use in the English world, like stone and pounds and teaspoons and all this stuff, has nothing to do with metric. Like metric's based off of the mass of water. But somehow magically, a pound of lean meat almost always, if it's a lean meat, has 100 grams of protein in it.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying you need, as a guy that is, 6'2" and wants to be 195 pounds to be in the Brad Pitt, Michael Jordan range, to look great, feel great, be great, you're going to need to eat 1.95 pounds of ground turkey today. So let's start with that ground turkey meal. And the hard part is maybe like eating that whole feast in one meal, in one sitting. And then not just that, but I'm going to give you carbs and I'm not going to demonize them. I'll be like, oh, well, here's the whole foods carbs from this list of carbs that are
I hope it's not plants because they're killing us slowly.
He's killing us slowly, plants. Is it the apples that are killing
And
us?
how could you make anybody eat that much ground turkey?
No, it's literally the hardest. No, it's the hardest one.
And Seema's soul just died.
Yeah, like ground turkey.
That's disgusting.
Maybe
97% lean.
How do we go from ribeye to
No, either way, if it's lean meat, if it's top sirloin,
We got you.
right. If it's top sirloin, we start there. We start at the feast table. Well, this doesn't seem that hard. I can try to put this down. Oh, actually, you couldn't. And even if it was your favorite meal in the world, if we're eating the right foods, if we're whole foods meat based, then at some point you're going to be like, dude, I know this tomahawk ribeye medium rare seared perfectly is my favorite food on the planet. But if I got it big enough, at some point there's going to be an amount of like ribeye left on the plate that I don't want anymore. Right? 2 bags of Oreos a day. I always wanted more Oreos.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, guys, at that time I was basically on a vegan diet. It's like we were poor, living in this little studio apartment in Long Beach, and I got money for my 2-pack a day Oreo habit and pasta and like tomato sauce or whatever. Worst shape of my life. But if we start with, we feast, we actually nourish our bodies to get the hormones that we need to endure, to be nourished. And what I say, if I could sum the whole hormone game up in like 2 sentences, is like, we beast, feast, fast, and sleep to show our bodies, to trigger the right hormones in the right amounts at the right times, to show our bodies that life is joyous and abundant. And there's a nuanced conversation to have about the difference between abundance and excess. Like, I want to have an abundant mindset. I want to bring all these great things into my life, but it's not a life about excess. Like, to me, excess is like, it's strippers and cocaine and rock stars. And abundance is like friends and joy and health and sunshine and nourishing food. And so we want to have abundance and not excess. And if we eat abundantly and nourish ourselves, the whole thing, even the part that you perceive as hard going into it, might become the easy part. Like fasting for me is the easiest part, right? And it makes your whole life more productive. Like, oh man, 5 a.m, I've got to pack my snack bag for the airport. And I'm not doing that, right? Like it gives you more freedom. Like there's more freedom everywhere because you have the discipline to do these simple things every day.
A ketogenic style diet and intermittent fasting, they tend to go well together.
And low carbohydrate.
And a low carbohydrate diet. One of the things that is helpful and what helps make a ketogenic diet work really well is that it works a little bit like fasting. So it's going to assist you and allow you to become a little bit more comfortable with hunger. You'll hear people sometimes say, I had, some scrambled eggs this morning with some cheese on it, and I didn't eat again until 2:00, something like that. And so the two tend to go hand in hand. And even as Nsima is pointing out, even just like low carbohydrate, where you're not necessarily trying to eat like tons of fat, because the keto diet, while it is pretty cool, it can be a little weird at times.
Did you two have a struggle when you first started affecting your diet, or was it never really something?
Oh no, it sucked. Trying to do fasting, we both thought it was stupid.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable for like the first few months, because you're used to eating breakfast, you're used to eating every few hours. But when you learn how to use certain tools like caffeine, electrolytes are extremely beneficial. One thing you'll find is like if you're not hydrated, you'll just usually drink a lot of water. But if you're electrolyte deficient, meaning you don't have like sodium, magnesium, potassium like we have in those element packets, you'll feel hungrier even though you're not actually hungry. You're actually just
because your body's telling you I need this nutrient, and it's telling you through you're hungry.
Yeah, you might even crave like sweets and stuff. Yeah, you get all kinds of weird cravings. That was actually really good, by the way. That chocolate mint.
It was surprisingly.
I don't like mint. I don't think you like mint.
I'm not a mint fan either. But for somebody like you, like the reason why I think fasting works so well for us also is because like we're always like busy. You have so much work during your day. Like for me, it got to a point where I don't even think about food until I'm finally done working. I'm like, oh, I'm actually hungry. Okay, and so we also have vertical meals. These are like, instead of going and getting something normal at fast food, I will sometimes go to In-N-Out and get some Flying Dutchman, which is just like, again, patties and cheese. Delicious. It's fucking amazing. So but I'll if I'm really hungry, I'll have vertical meals right there. So like I don't end up making
just a meal
worse
prep
option.
Company.
Yeah.
Well, the meal that I was eating when you walked in, that was a breakfast scramble from Vertical Meals. I forgot the amount of calories, but it had 32 grams of protein, and it tastes phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And there's just a lot of little things, just making sure you have like protein on hand, you know what I mean, or something, and always an option if you get really fucking hungry. But
you're a big guy, and so the hardest thing is to try to, how the fuck do we manage your hunger? How do we manage, and you mentioned you were heavier just a couple months ago. It's like, how do we manage whatever body weight you were at then? How do we kind of continuously work on that? Because even if you get yourself down to, let's say, like 200 pounds or something like that, or 220 pounds, your body's still going to kind of remember how hungry you were previously. It's like that's going to continue on for a while.
That's a good point.
I used to be 330 pounds, and so like I'm still kind of fighting off that fat bastard. I could weigh 270 by the end of the year, I think, if I
wait 270 in 6 weeks if you wanted to.
Yeah. I think it wouldn't take very long. I'll just start swelling up.
Do it.
We were talking yesterday, and you mentioned you still utilize fasting. There are a lot of days that you eat one single meal. And one shocking thing is you still maintain a lot of size and muscle. You actually even mentioned to me that your girlfriend was making fun of you because she said that she eats more than you. So my question is like, why do you choose to fast, even though there's so many people that think it probably is not going to be beneficial for sports, athleticism, and maintaining muscle?
Yeah, I think that it makes me feel good. It gives me clarity of mind, and I think it makes it gives me clarity of mind, and I just feel overall good when I fast. So never mind what people are saying, never mind how it's gonna affect my sport. I feel good when I'm fasting. I feel good when I'm going for my training. I feel energetic. I don't feel like I'm missing food or anything.
And you train fasted too?
Yeah. And I do that.
So do you have like any electrolytes? Do you do anything like that? And also, do you eat one meal a day generally, or are there some days where you eat more?
No, there are definitely days where I eat more, or where I decide to go for a multiple meal a day. And there are days, during the week, like maybe I'll take 2 or 3 days where I'm going to fast.
2 or 3?
Yeah.
So 2 or 3 full days?
2 or 3 days where I'm going to do, for instance, intermittent fasting. I'm going to do 1 day where I'm having just water. Then the next day I'm going to have no water. And then the following day I'm going to have, I'm going to go back to eating, but very slowly, getting back to eat again. And then I eat maybe a few more meals the next day. Yeah.
Damn, yeah, because you're 10 pounds lighter than last time we saw you.
Yeah.
You dropped some weight, and you just did it through just eating less food.
Just eating less, and I just keep my activity mode up. So I'm really active, and and I drop weight.
I think it's hard because of the way you look. You look so good that people are like, "There's no, that's not it." No, that's not it, because they see the stuff you do on Instagram, and they're like, "That can't be it. It can't just be simple. It can't just be that this guy's been doing it every day."
And you know what? When I wake up in the morning, I don't know about you. When you wake up and you want to, do you eat first before you train, or what do you do? Because
some day, for me personally, some days I eat before I train. But like today, no, I didn't feel hungry. I didn't feel like eating today. This morning.
For me, I took the habit of not eating before I'm training. So I wake up in the morning and I have like maybe I meditate a little bit. Then I get ready to go for my training, and I like to go and have my training, empty stomach. And I feel very good.
How long have you been doing that for?
For quite some time. Yeah,
your body gets used to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You get acclimated to it.
Yeah.
Do you remember how long ago it was that you started doing that? Like how many years ago?
I think I've been doing that for already, I don't know, more than 7-8 years.
7-8 years.
Yeah.
Wow. If anyone's listening about this part of it, it's interesting because even George St. Pierre has said that he does a lot of intermittent fasting now. And when he was fighting, he said that he wished he utilized it a bit just because he noticed that he was mentally sharper when it came to fighting, when he utilized a bit of fasting.
I think mental clarity is very important. I don't want to feel myself and to eat like there was no other food tomorrow. I just want to feel good. So I'm not... people tend to look at me and think this guy must be eating the whole house. It's not true. I think I eat less than a lot of people. Than like maybe everyone here in the room probably eat more than me. Even Andrew. Andrew. No, I think I make sure to have enough nutrient. And of course, when I want to eat, I go for it, right? When I want to eat, I go for it. I'm not saying that I deprive myself all the time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm very relaxed about my approach with food. So I go for intermittent fasting, I go for fasting, and then I go for eating. So sometimes I'm a pescatarian, sometimes I go back to eating meat,